Hello, I'm Bret Lizundia. I'm a structural engineer with Rutherford Chekene in San Francisco, and I was the co-leader of the Earthquake Engineering Research Institute's Learning from Earthquakes reconnaissance visit to Nepal after the devastating earthquakes in April this year and the major aftershocks that followed. I'll be giving you an overview of EERI's Learning from Earthquakes program and the specific approach that we took to investigating the Nepal earthquake. This is part of a series of briefings. This is the first one to just set the stage for you. We'll be talking a little bit more about what the remaining video presentations entail a little later here. The Earthquake Engineering Research Institute, EERI, is really the preeminent organization in the world devoted to investigating earthquake engineering issues. It's a large group of people who are dedicated to all aspects of looking at earthquakes. I'm a structural engineer, but it includes many, many other kinds of disciplines. Our mission is to reduce earthquake risk. We do that by gaining a better understanding of what happens in earthquakes, advancing how we practice engineering, and then sometimes advocating for improvements and changes in ways that we can mitigate or reduce risk. We have a broad multidisciplinary group of people who work in different ways. Some are in private practice like myself, some are educators, we have many building officials and government officials and researchers. We're all dedicated to essentially making the world a safer place. We're organized into committees, into projects, into chapters across the globe, really. And one of the key programs that the EERI emphasizes, it's one that we've been doing for many, many years, involves our Learning from Earthquakes program, where we go to seminal earthquakes that have occurred and try and understand what happened, try and learn from our observations, try and synthesize what we've seen, and try and communicate that to the community with the hope that those lessons can be appreciated and implemented in other parts of the world. For the Nepal earthquake effort, we had a number of specific and somewhat unique features that we implemented on this approach. Perhaps the most significant and the most valuable was a very effective partnership with the National Society for Earthquake Technology in Nepal, which is known by the term NSET. We partnered together. There were several people on our team from NSET. They helped us with logistics. They helped us with connections with people who had information that we needed to learn, getting access to areas, and their extensive knowledge of the whole earthquake engineering set of issues and policy implications in Nepal. So that was incredibly rewarding and valuable, I think, for all of us on the team. But a very large team. We had 13 people who participated from all across the world. Each team member had a different perspective, a different focus, and was assigned different tasks and to try and tackle different strategic objectives. We also, for the first time, included as part of the overall effort a feature called Virtual Team Collaborators. So these were generally younger people who were enthusiastically interested in participating, and they assisted the team before, during, and after the earthquake with acquiring information, doing research, dealing with photographs, providing reviews. I think it was a great idea that's been quite successful. As all of you probably are well aware, there are many reconnaissance team efforts that occur after major earthquakes. This was no exception. So EERI tried to work together and share information from all of the folks around the world who were going to Nepal. That includes at least, at this point, 30 other teams, all of whom, look at things from their own particular perspective, but we're all able to work synergistically together. EERI also established a new role to curate information on EERI's website so that we could quickly share documents, photographs, information, news reports that had come to provide a repository of value to our membership and to others. We spent a substantial amount of time in Kathmandu, in the Kathmandu Valley, but the majority of the damage in this earthquake was in rural areas. And so we spent a substantial amount of time, probably about half of our effort, in several more rural districts, both to the west, the northeast, and the east of Kathmandu, to gain a better understanding of what happened in those areas. Also, an unusual and key feature of this effort was the beginning of a longitudinal case study effort where our emphasis is on resilience. So at this first visit, we went and we looked about what had happened in terms of planning prior to the event, what had happened during the event, and we did our own sort of reconnaissance for future missions that will come later. I mentioned that we had strategic objectives. It's important to me that when we go to events like this that people have goals in mind, things that we want to accomplish, and so we can spend our efforts in a focused and effective way. So here is a list of 9 goals that we had. Many of these are challenging and difficult to do comprehensively, but I think to some extent we were able to address all of them in one way or another. And as we continue our work in writing a report, we'll continue to go into more detail investigating these particular things. The team members, I mentioned that it was a big group. This is not the entire group. It was hard to get us all in one place due to people going to different districts, but here's most of us there. You can see from the list that we have people from all over the world, which was very enjoyable and I think very powerful. There are people who have many different specialties that really helped one another to learn from the event while we were there, and has certainly happened afterwards as well. My co-leader on the team was Surya Shrita from NSET, and his assistance and our partnership was of great value. EERI, as I mentioned earlier, has put together what they call a virtual clearinghouse. That was established quickly after the event, and there's just a vast amount of information, so I would encourage you to take a look at that. It's always changing. It's always getting bigger and better. So if you've looked before, I'd encourage you to look again. Here is a list of the Clearinghouse Curators who help the EERI staff with that effort. You can see we've organized them by topic and drawn from generally students, but sometimes people in practice as well, younger professionals or graduate students often, or younger professors who have specific interests in these topics, so that's been of great benefit. It definitely takes a village to tackle this effort, and these folks are part of that village. The list of virtual team collaborators is here, so everyone on our team was partnered with someone, and I was assisted by Deepak Pant of the University of Toronto, and you can see a list of all the other people who were gracious enough to share their time with us. So in terms of what we did while we were there for about a week and a half, and at the very beginning we had a key session that NSET organized where they brought together government officials, private practice professionals, heads of organizations like the Nepal Engineers Association, a large number of people, much larger than this photo, that's just some of them, and they were extremely valuable in giving us advice on where to go, giving us contacts for people that we should meet with during our time there. And so in that process, we probably interviewed over 200 individuals, from agency leaders to the people who are suffering with damaged homes and landslides out in the field. At the end of our visit, we gave a short debriefing of our findings, We had some interviews on different TV stations. We accumulated through a strong effort a vast number of photographs that have been geotagged, and so they will be available on EERI's website. That process of uploading them is about half complete. Here is a map of where we went. We are in, of course, Nepal, which is in between India and China. Here in the colored view is a blow-up. The colors represent the level of intensity or shaking that occurred, so the darker colors are the higher intensities. Intensities ranged up to MMI 8, maybe hints of MMI 9 in the really badly damaged areas next to the main shock, which was here. Kathmandu is in the middle over here, so the first event was in Gorkha. A large aftershock occurred to the east later. And so that's why you can see kind of pockets of different damage around. The cross-hatching represents the districts. Nepal is organized administratively into a series of districts. From a U.S. perspective, they're a little bit like the states that we have. So we went to a large number of districts in the heavily shaken areas. Here's a blow-up of those districts. So Gorkha is where the main shock occurred. Kathmandu and the Kathmandu Valley is here in the middle. The blue dots represent geotagged locations of where the photographic trail of our visit occurred. Those dots may represent, hundreds of photographs that were taken in a particular town just because of the scale of the map. So about half of our 11,000 photographs are represented on this image at this point. We spent time camping in several districts. In some of these communities, there was so much damage that there's nowhere to stay anymore. So this was an informal settlement camp in Chitara, which is perhaps 3-4 hours away from Kathmandu. So we were, living for a while next to the people who sadly no longer have homes. We have prepared this briefing series as part of the effort. There will be an upcoming report later in the year that talks about what we did and what we found. We are planning for future visits to focus on resilience later this year and next year. As part of that community case study effort, which I think will be really potentially groundbreaking, kind of fascinating, we selected, or are in the process of selecting, several communities that we visited to focus our efforts on. We've already conducted detailed interviews while we were there. When people go back, they will continue those conversations. And our goal is to understand what happened before the event, during the event, soon after the event, and as the recovery progress occurs from now until, a year from now or so. We'll be looking at how do lifelines recover? How does housing recover? Were there changes that in people's plans, or were there successful implementations of plans? Just what happened and what lessons can we learn from that? So to wrap up here, I mentioned at the beginning that this first introduction is the beginning of a series of videos that are available for your viewing pleasure. You can look at them, one by one or whenever you want. They cover a wide range of topics. I think some of them may be right up your alley in your own particular professional discipline. On the other hand, there may be things that you know less about that might actually be quite interesting and illuminating. So I would encourage you to take a look at these videos. I'd like to acknowledge that, as you can see, this is just a small snapshot of many, many individuals and organizations who we shared information with, who we learned from, who helped us with funding, with logistics, with coordination, other reconnaissance teams. It's really an enormous effort of a huge amount of well-meaning folks that made this successful. Probably the most important are the people that we met in Nepal who shared their stories and their time with us in a time of trouble. It was really quite rewarding to see how resilient and how hopeful they are given the difficulties that they face moving forward. So thank you very much, and please take a look at the remaining videos.